we serve stuff we're proud of for completely and utterly selfish reasons. I want to serve you stuff that I'm proud of, and I realize my pride is a selfish thing. Like, it's selfish for me to want to be proud of what I'm serving, but I want my employees, the team, to have that experience because it's service, not servitude, right?
Hey everyone, my name is Angela Hollowell and I'm your host here at Honey and Hustle. In this episode, I'm sitting down with Shannon Healy, who is one of the founders of Alley 26. Alley 26 is a staple in downtown Durham, and it's where I celebrated one of my birthdays. So I'm also personally a fan and super excited for you to meet the guy behind the concept. In this episode, you'll learn from a James Beard Award nominee why it's okay to be a little bit selfish when creating your business. This year is my 29th birthday, and for my birthday I was like, you know what, I want to have a really, really nice meal. So I went to Alley 26 for my birthday. I love a good steak. Steak was cooked to perfection, right? Cocktail drinks, amazing, immaculate. Only thing that would have been better is if I had gone on Sunday, so then I would have got the brunch and the jazz situation, and that would have made it incredible and delicious and just all the things that you want when you're celebrating a special occasion, right? So with that being said, how do you think Alley 26 came to be synonymous with a nice luxury experience here in Durham?
How do I think that? Okay, there's a lot to unpack there. Well, when we first opened, you know, I did it kind of threadbare. You know, we have like this wall of whiskey when you go in there now, right? When I opened, there was 2 single malt scotches on the back bar because I couldn't afford that much. So we tried to keep it curated as much as possible. We did a craft cocktail bar in downtown Durham before there was another one. So the good thing about the Triangle is that people come here from everywhere. So all of them were like all cool with it. But a lot of folks that were used to places in Durham were like, would come in, they're like, well, this doesn't feel very Durham. I'm like, it does to me. Or all of the slags we got for bad reviews in the first few weeks we were open was like, this is too expensive. So I like to say, all I've done is raise my prices and get cheaper. Because everybody around me is now coming in and trying to do the same thing. And as it turns out, if you want to make cocktails in a state where the cost of liquor to the hospitality account is significantly more than in major markets, you can't. It looks like, why are the drinks so expensive? I'm like, the liquor's so expensive. We pay $5 a fluid ounce. Excuse me, $5 a fluid liter above retail. So whatever the average, our customer walks into the liquor store in North Carolina and buys a bottle of, we pay $5 more a liter for that same stuff. We don't get a wholesale, like it's more. Back to your original question. The idea originally was a curated kind of thing. It wasn't like, come in here, we have everything you want. We actively don't have everything you want. You know, but what I realized and what I really love about the way Durham downtown has grown is there's very few people trying to do everything. People pick a lane and they're like, I want to do this thing well. I don't think you can do everything well. So we got very specific about what we did, and we've always kind of held to that model of like, we're going to try to do the one thing we do well. We're not going to confuse ourselves with, you know, we have a very narrow wine program. I love all of the wines we serve. Like, I think they're all great wines, but we only have 3 reds, 3 whites, a rosé, and sparkles. That's the whole list of wine. Now we have a few more, like, if you really want to ball out and have a bottle of like grower champagne, we got you covered. But we don't like by the glass list isn't very complicated, and so much so that it's even less complicated than when we opened, because now all the wines are really well made, famous grapes from the places that are famous for those grapes. So if you're a wine lover and you're in there with other people who are interested in cocktails, but you're like, I don't drink cocktails, I only have wine. That's great, but you have 0 questions about the wine. Because I can't train my staff to know as much as they know about cocktails and spirits and modifiers and all that stuff, and then expect them to know as much as the folks that run really great wine programs. Like, so I can offer great wine, but I can't offer like the interesting trip down like odd corners of the wine world, where, like some of our folks in town can do. But they can't do cocktails. So it's about picking the lane, I think, is for us. That's how we got the reputation that you were speaking of. We want stuff that's curated, first of all. Like if you wanted Jack and Coke, I'm sorry, I don't have the products for you. Like I literally can't make that. 7 and 7, Bacardi and Coke, some of the most famous orders on the planet I can't make. And some of that is intentional because if we're gonna do one thing well, and you know, everybody's kind of in some way hostage to the moment they open, and you have to keep revisiting what the land was when you opened because you don't necessarily want to be beholden to that moment as the moment, because time goes on, right? We wanted to let people know what a craft cocktail bar was, but I couldn't offer stuff that they could get everywhere else, because if I did, they would just order that and wouldn't understand what we were doing. And then if you can get a Jack and Coke at Alley 26 and get a Jack and Coke everywhere else, you have no reason to come back to Alley 26. Right. I mean, at the beginning, because we were on the dark end of a dark street. Like the restaurant catty corner to us closed at 8:30. We were open till 2. The only light on really on Chapel Hill Street between 5 Points and Mateo opened, I think, a month before us. And us was that static display of a printing press, you know, and the window had a big bullet hole in it. And so that's where we were trying to get people to come down to. You know, when we first opened, the most common question I got from people was, is it safe here? Like a couple years later, I noticed nobody's asking me that question anymore. That's great, but that's what we were up against, and I needed to give people a reason to want to come to our establishment, and that reason was we're going to do something other people aren't doing in Durham, and we're going to do it very specifically, and hopefully we can pick a lane that we can be proud of how we do it. And if we can do that, and if we want to stay proud of how we do it, then we kind of have to really stay in our lane. We have to really kind of like lean into it. I don't know if I answered your question at all.
I think you did. I think you did. And I think a lot of what you said really translates well to other areas of entrepreneurship, right? Like if I'm going to start offering a service or a product, right? But it's the same service and product that 10 other people in my industry are offering. What am I doing that's differentiating me from them? And if I know what's differentiating me, why am I not just focusing on that instead of trying to compete with everybody else doing the same thing, right? So I think, and again, a lot of that does come with the territory of hearing no a lot more often, right? Because people are going to come to expect certain industry standards like a Jack and Coke or whatever the equivalent is. Yeah. Whether that's just like, I don't know, for me, maybe standard photography or something like that, portrait photography. But then like when you start to dive into, well, what makes me unique? What makes the experience people I want to have with me unique? And how can I focus on that and get comfortable with hearing, well, that's not for me, right?
No, it's not, exactly. That's fine. Like some people are shocked when how comfortable you are at hearing no. It's like, no, it's okay. Yeah. What I like to think is some people don't understand that if they don't like it, somehow it's bad. So when we're training our staff, we're like, if we want to serve cool stuff, we have to do everything we can to manage expectations of our guest, right? If I want to have a shrub on and it's got a distinctive vinegar twang, everybody needs to be told when they order it, like, oh yeah, that's got that, I'll have this shrub. Okay, that's got a blueberry vinegar in it. And vinegar is a really nice, prominent note on that drink. Or do you like vinegar? Well, I like blueberries. It's not the question. Do you like vinegar? Because it's going to taste like vinegar. And if they're like, oh, I don't like that, well, let's get you something else. So if we can manage expectation, we're less likely to, what I don't mind saying no, what I don't want is to put something in front of you and you taste it and have a negative reaction. Like, because just because you don't like smoky things doesn't mean my Mescal or my Isla Scotch is wrong, right? It just means that maybe I should have done a better job laying the groundwork of what I was about to serve you. And if you tell me what you like, I'm happy to make you something you like, unless you're brand loyal, unless you're like, no, I only drink Makers and ginger. And it's like, okay, I don't have that product. But if you came in here, and that was another reason we eschewed early on some brand names, is because people A lot of people don't understand that just because either A, we were a bar for the adventurous, right? We wanted people with adventurous palates to come in and try things and be adventurous. And one of the ways to do that is to kind of make them. If I don't have your fallback, you can either leave or you can try something, and I'm going to do my best to give you things. I'm going to ask you about flavors you like, and I'm going to do my best to give you exactly what you like. It might not be what you expect to order, but it's going to be something you like, because I'm going to literally take the words that came out of your mouth and make something based on that. And they're going to go, I like this, almost always. It's the same reaction. Wow, this is great. How'd you do that? I'm like, I cheated. You told me what you liked, and I made it out of things you like. Like, it's not rocket science. It's just being willing to listen to the customer. So a lot of people are confused on the customer side that that if they don't like it, it's not good. It's like, look, I understand K-pop is a global phenomenon. Shannon doesn't know anything about K-pop, and that's okay. They don't need my business. It doesn't make them wrong. It's just not something I've decided I've got to learn more about. You know, just because something is out there and it's popular with some folks or it's got a niche market, just because it's not my thing doesn't mean it's bad. It just means some folks have that a little twisted, and on the other end, it is dangerous to say no in a small market. Like, the reason why really niche businesses, especially retail businesses, do well in big cities is because if you get, you know, 1,000th of the population interested in your product in Manhattan, it's a huge market. If you get 1,000%, you know, 1,000th of a percent of Durhamites interested, you are out of business. So by virtue of that, sometimes you have to cast a slightly wider net. You know, you can't be, or what I like to think is you don't have to cast a wider net with offerings. You have to cast a more hospitable net. You know, you have to be able to not just say, if you don't like it, well, you're just not cool enough. That's not the thing. We needed to win people over with our hospitality and like win them over to like, why do we think it's cool? And like and the fact that we thought it was cool or thought that these new flavors, these flavors and cocktails were interesting was something, is part of the hospitality. It's like part of the offering of what I'm giving the people that show up is something that I genuinely believe is interesting and delicious. And if I can find what they like, if they don't see what they like on the menu, often we'll just take the menu from them. Like, just stop looking at that. Let's talk about what you like. Now, we can do that. It's easier to do that on the drink side than it is the food side. You know, like, I don't have a grocery store back there on the food side. So we have a little, like, hopefully we wrote a menu and you'll find something you like and you'll order it. But with the drink side, I have enough latitude with modifiers, you know, the syrups and the vermouths and the bitters and all the other stuff. And we've got a good enough selection of spirits where if you come in and say, this is what I like, and I ask you a few questions, I'm going to put something in front of you that you're going to like. So hopefully that approach gets people to trust you, even if their normal modus operandi for going into a bar is to just order their standard.
Yeah.
Like, I'll have my usual. It's like, yeah, I don't have your usual. But I have things that you might like.
Yeah. I think that's a beautiful way to look at it. And I want to go back to something you said originally, which is someone came in and said, this doesn't feel like Durham.
Yeah.
So
two ways of the same exact point. I would get either A, this doesn't feel like Durham. It's like, you mean it doesn't feel like what is here now after 45 years of white flight. Is that what you mean? This abandoned downtown that has like probation offices and just regular offices in what was Class A retail space, right? So it's like this is supposed to be like a thriving downtown for businesses on Main Street and for businesses on Paris Street. And both of those were different retail markets, or they had different, at the time, they had different markets, but they were both Class A retail, you know, and all the furniture stores were on Chapel Hill Street. My building was originally Center Furniture, in fact, at one point in its history. So, like, it doesn't feel like Durham now. Why? Oh, because you expect Durham, it has to be gritty to be Durham. Like, no, does it though? Because we're losing people in Durham. We were losing people who wanted to go out for a nice meal. There was like two good there was Nana's and there was a couple. I'm not going to say there was none. But there was, when I was working in Chapel Hill for years, a good part of our market was people driving in from Durham. Raleigh was the same thing, right? So what I realized after we were open for a few years here in Durham was that all of a sudden it wasn't just Alley 26, but Durham had gotten that reputation where something's happening downtown. And people would come down and and every night I was serving people from Chapel Hill, it was the opposite. It's not from Durham, it's like, okay, it's not what you think Durham has to be, but Durham, to my K-pop thing earlier, doesn't have to be, music isn't just good because you like it. Right? Art isn't just good because it relates to you. It can be, as long as it speaks to someone, it can have a purpose. And I thought I wanted to do the kind of bar I wanted to do, and on the flip side, I said there was two ways to go about that. A, it doesn't feel like Durham. Other people would come into the bar. They'd say the same thing in a very different way, which was like, wow, this feels like a New York bar, or this feels like an LA bar. And I would always respond, it feels like a Durham bar to me. This is what I think a downtown Durham bar is. Don't get me wrong, I love bars, which is probably why I own one. But I love dive bars, and I love sports bars, and I love Irish pubs, and I like all the different kinds of bars. But the thing about picking your lane is, there's no TVs in my bar. If you want to see the game, Alley 26 isn't your spot. If you want a great selection of beer on tap, there are plenty of places in town for that. I have no beer on tap. I have all these tap handles. People are like, oh, what do you have on tap? Cocktails. And they're like, what? Oh, this is a craft cocktail bar. It's like, I like tacos, but when I'm at the Italian restaurant, I don't order one, because that seems like a bad idea, right? The expectation that you should get the same thing everywhere, or that Durham is one thing, it seems needlessly limiting for both people who want to open cool stuff and for the population, for the community of Durham. Don't we deserve to have cocktail bars and Irish pubs and beer-centric spots? And you can't have it all if you say everything has to feel like what's already there. So it doesn't feel like Durham. I always thought was lame.
Yeah. Okay. That's that's hilarious. But I love that take and that energy in terms of striking this balance between shaking up a market and really carving your own lane and sticking to that, even though it's something completely different, and also not being afraid to say this is who I am. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like now, in an era where everybody's being told to pick your niche, right?
Yeah.
It's just yes, pick your niche, but don't let your niche distract you from providing a genuinely good service, which is what the business is about.
At the end of the day, I tell the staff, we serve stuff we're proud of for completely and utterly selfish reasons. We don't do it to make money. You make a lot more money giving people what they expect. You just do. I don't want to do that, so I was more interested in what we were doing in this kind of thing. And so pick a niche is fine, but at the end of the day, I've never worked for anybody who didn't have some version of this to say. People can drink well, cheaply at home. They're not coming out just for the service of somebody making something for them. They're coming out for the service of being served in a way that's friendly and hospitable and warm and welcoming. And if we can do that, we can offer them things that they don't expect. And, it takes a while, but you can curate an audience to people there's enough people that, cocktails, we didn't invent the idea that cocktails were making a comeback, right? We were just the first ones in Durham to really lean into it. And so the idea that you can give somebody something that they don't expect or something, and you can gain their trust by giving them, displaying, I can listen to you and give you something that you will like. And then all of a sudden they're like, okay, I don't have to be scared of this. And another thing I tell the staff is the bar business spent 60 to 80 years lowering the expectations of our clientele. That they come in and expect that all cocktails are sweet. Now, younger folks don't. You didn't grow up in this era where if you ordered a cocktail, it was gross and sweet. But I did, my parents did, their parents did. So we spent generations teaching Americans anybody that ordered a decent cocktail after 1962 was probably given something that was, if they didn't order at a very specific place, they might have learned a tough lesson, which was, this is terrible. I'm just going to stick with beer or wine. You know what I mean? Like, this is bad.
Yeah.
And when I grew up in the bar business, like my first bartending job was in 1991. So I've been doing this a while. So the floor, the expectation of my clientele is different. And in some ways, it's great for you. Like, as somebody who likes cocktails, a rising tide raises all boats. And once craft cocktails became popular, it's not that you go, I'm not afraid that Chili's is now using fresh juice. I applaud that Chili's is now using fresh juice, right? I mean, I don't know what they ever used.
Yeah, right.
I'm just saying, like, the baseline for crap that you would normally get, that has also been raised. Like, where there's more people even just like paying enough attention to the market now knows that, like, well, I don't need to actually drink something that you made with Rose's lime juice. I don't actually need that. Because I can go to any place now and expect a certain level of quality that is higher than it was 20 years ago. And because enough customers have seen what better cocktails are, what better pizza is, what better, like, they get exposed to these things, and it kind of raises what you can passably serve as the entry level. So, you know, it's pick your niche, yeah, but I think hospitality is the main thing.
Yeah.
If you can make people feel comfortable, they're willing to either A, go with you fancier, or B, be completely satisfied, depending on the market, with what you're offering them, because what you're really offering them is that service. That, like, I feel comfortable here. And when we first opened, the slag against cocktail bars in general was this attitude, this, like, I mean, what was there, some show I saw, they literally did skits on, like, how pretentious the cocktail, like, oh, it's got this in it and this in it and this in it. One more thing, love. And it's like, oh my God, get over yourself, right?
That's so funny.
So yeah, so it's like, okay, if the slag against these bars is that it's too pretentious, where is that coming from? It's coming from A, a reality that in some places is way too, like, seriously, calm the hell down. And B, also, people aren't feeling welcome. They're coming in, and the idea that you're giving them is like, we're so cool, and they're like, well, I'm not that cool, and maybe I'm too cool for this. I'm not cool enough for this space. And what we wanted to do when we opened is like, yes, you are. A, this is incredibly cool, and you are cool enough for this space. Let me explain to you. That's part of the hospitality. It was like, this is so cool. I think you'd like it.
Yeah.
Like, that for us was our game plan. Like, how do I make people say that, yeah, it's not too cool for you, it's so cool I think you'll like it. Like, it's a very different kind of way to get there.
Right. I really want to go back to that, but there's something else that you mentioned that I want to tackle first, if you're okay with that. So when you're talking about just like creating something that people see themselves in, right? See themselves into the point where they're willing to say, you know, for every, you know, person or business that they encounter in that industry, this is the level of service that I expect, right? And I am willing to pay a premium price point for that, more so than what I can do on my own, right? And that's, again, translates to any industry. And I think that is like such a powerful statement to make, because again, when we talk about like starting a business, one fear that people have that I hear all the time is, well, there's so many people doing it, you know, how can I do something different? Or, you know, who are my competitors in this space? And it's like, dude, your competitors are helping you. The better they are, the better you will be, and the better quality people will come to expect and be mentally prepared to pay for, right? And it's not to say that we should go until like things are just astronomically inexpensive for, you know, our target audience or the average person. But it is saying that, like, if you want to be able to charge a premium price point for a premium experience, the best way to help you, one of the best ways to help you do that, is to have other people in the industry who are doing the same thing in their own way.
It justifies the price point. Like, people already, they're not surprised while you're paying that, because your competition's already doing the same thing and offering a similar product. So you don't have to explain, like, no, the reason mine is 40% more is X. When I first opened, we only had one $12 cocktail on the menu, and people walked in, they're like, one guy walks in, is everything on the menu $12? I'm like, well, it is if you only order the one drink. I was like, for him, like, the audacity of charging something that was too expensive. I'm like, well, then don't order that. order the thing. There was always once again, there was only one of them that was that expensive. Now, of course, everything has changed over 11 years, including coming out of the pandemic and inflation and all kinds of stuff. So the price points the numbers are different, but the idea is the same. Like, there are certain things that are more expensive, there are certain things that are less expensive. I'm not apologizing I won't apologize for serving a drink that you think is more expensive than you normally would spend on a drink. I don't expect the guy who sells Maseratis to apologize. I can't afford that, but I don't have any problem with him selling it, right? Like, it's fine. Hopefully he'll make lots of taxes and we can use that in anywhere in Durham we want to use. So to your point about competition, two things. Before I opened, somebody asked me that. And he's like, well, people are going to figure this out. Like, the real estate's cheaper here. You can do stuff here. And I hear everybody's going to want to move to Durham. What are you going to do when there's 12 bars? I'm like, be better. Like, what do you want me to tell you? Like, be better. And I don't mean better in just like I use more expensive ingredients. I mean, like, be better, be more hospitable. Do offer things you're constantly proud of. Don't phone it in. I spend far more money training my staff than anybody else does. Like, and that is my competitive advantage. I tell the staff constantly, like, you are the reason people come back. Like, that's it. So, like that, and I continue to believe in that. And the day you start phoning it in is the day your competition is. So, but the other, I said two thoughts, right? That's the one thought, just be better. At least have a voice. By better, I mean, like, people shouldn't wonder when they're there what you're doing. Like, right? They should be able to figure out, okay, this is what they're doing, this is who they are. Either I like this, or this is not my thing. Either way, but that's how you find your advocates, right? You find your people that are willing to, like, invest in your brand, in your service. The other thing is, I like good neighbors. And it's very communal. The bar and restaurant scene in downtown Durham is something I'm very proud of being a part of, and be incredibly supportive and communal. When my ice machine breaks, I go across the street to number 3, they give me ice. Yeah. I haven't given ice in 24 hours to somebody else who's like, our thing is, I'm like, yeah, we got enough. Let's, whatever. It's all good. And every time somebody opens, not every time, but most times when somebody opens a bar, especially somebody who's going to serve cocktails in downtown Durham, I usually put a drink on my menu, dedicated to them. Like we've done it since, like we did it for Arcana when they opened. Nice. We've done it, we have one on the menu currently called Rooftop Royale, celebrating Velvet Hippos coming on. Nice. We did one called Bird Spotting, I think it was called, for Kingfisher when they opened. Yeah. We did one for the Durham, and then it took them a year to open, so we did a different one for the Durham, 21C when it opened. What I like to do is go in and taste their menu, like see what they're doing, and have a drink that speaks to what they're doing. Like more than just acknowledging that they're there, but like, what are they doing? Like, what is interesting about what you should check out about them is somehow reflected in this. We just did Glory Days, our glory cocktail for like a month and a half, which was, I went in there and she had some interesting, he and I always argue about cognac. He's a Remy guy, John's a Remy guy, and I'm a Hennessy guy. So we banter, but he's been a friend of mine for years. And she had, she's doing the more of the cocktails. And she had a drink on the menu that was what was it called? A long walk, or I forget the name of the drink she had, but it was a riff. It was with passion fruit and it was a margarita riff with passion fruit. So I did a drink that had passion fruit, tequila, and brandy all together with some other things, just to kind of like say, this speaks to both of them and their concept and things. This is kind of, in a way, they were doing interesting things with like a lot more salt and stuff on the rims. And so we had that. Like, so it was basically, I wanted the drink to reflect, like, I see you. I see what you're doing, welcome, and they're friends of mine. So I'm super excited about having friends in the neighborhood and it's just good. Like, having good neighbors is, to your point, like, I'd rather downtown Durham be associated with, it's a lot easier for me if people come to Durham and then decide where they're gonna go. It was a lot harder early on when we're sitting on an island and people had to come to Alley 26. If they didn't come to Alley 20, when they got in their car, because nobody was living down here, Very few. I was, but very few other people were living down here. They had to get in their car with the intention of going to Alley 26 when they first opened. Now, hopefully, more and more people are coming to Durham anyway, and while they're coming, if I've made them like the bar enough, they're going to come when they're going to DPAC. They're going to come when they're going to the theater. They're going to come to me now for dinner, hopefully, and then a drink before or after someplace else, or inverse, like what happened for the first few bunch of years, which I always love when good restaurants open, because I got there because people would come before or after because they knew they wanted to come to Alley 26. But if they're driving in from Raleigh, maybe they're not just coming for drinks and driving home. Right. You know, they're going to come to dinner. So to your point, yeah, having great neighbors and just if having great neighbors explains, it makes the conversation, the explanation easier. At this point, not only in Durham, but in American history, I don't have to explain to people what a craft cocktail is. Yeah. But in 2012 in Durham, I did. Like, it was really like, yeah, I understand. Everybody, I've been to cocktail bars all my life. No, you actually haven't. You know, like if you've been to, and there's like a handful that you could mention, and if you hadn't been to those, then you didn't really know what I was doing. But fortunately, like I said earlier, at Durham, the Triangle in general is a place where a lot of people have been other places. And they're like, oh yeah, and this is kind of like yeah.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for tuning into this episode. I hope you're enjoying it. If you want to be the first to receive this episode in your inbox when it drops, please subscribe to our newsletter. Please hustle responsibly. I share that newsletter twice a week, and I would love to have you there in the comments section, in the chat, hanging out with us. And if you would like a premium version of that newsletter to get more access to the behind the scenes of my creative business, that option is available as well. And I would love to have you in our community of creators who are growing and scaling their businesses. All right, that's all from me. Let's get back to the episode.
Kind of like that. Nice.
That's good. Always a compliment. The other thing I wanted to go back to what you said that we're doing this business in a selfish way, right? And I think that is highly ironic because when I came to Alley 26 for my birthday, there were a couple designated cocktails that some of the proceeds from the drinks would go to the LGBTQ Center of Durham.
Oh, yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, that's selfish too. Like, I mean, it all depends on like how you look at it. You know, Jay's a friend of mine, and he was leading the LGBTQ Center of Durham at the time, and we did something for we do stuff. I don't want to like name drop, but we do stuff for we do stuff for different charities when we can, like when it makes sense. What I meant by selfishly, it's like everybody's welcome, right? So, but I want to put myself in the situation. I've been in hospitality. My first bartending job, not my first job in hospitality. That was in 1985. My first bartending job was in 91. And I've worked all but like 3 years since then as a bartender, in some more general manager and bartender of some place or another. So I've worked at places where like it's fine, the stuff's fine. I've worked at places where like even if they're angry, you put the food or drink in front of them, and they're like, oh, this is great. Like, you know what I mean? I'm like, I want that other one. So when I say selfishly, like I want to serve you stuff that I'm proud of, and I realize my pride is a selfish thing. Like it's selfish for me to want to be proud of what I'm serving, but I want my employees, the team, to have that experience because it's service, not servitude, right? Service is something we should be proud of our ability to offer quality service. It's a craft, it is a skill service. So they should be able to be proud of it, and what helps you be proud of it is being proud of what you're serving. And the difference in how you're treated when you're somebody who knows what they're serving, knows more than the customers about what they're serving. You're not just taking an order, you're guiding an experience. So the way that the relationship between you and your clientele is different by the quality of things you're serving and your knowledge of the service is something I've always wanted people that worked at Alley 26 to be able to have. Because that is a very, very different experience from just taking an order and I don't know where it is, let me check the kitchen, I don't know. You know, like that whole experience is just a very different experience, you know, and I want, it's the reason I'm in hospitality. right? I'm still in this game. I'm not waiting for my real job. Like,
I love that term, real job.
Exactly. I'm not waiting for my real job. This is what I do. I'm a hospitality professional. But I can see why other people who only worked at a bar or at a I did flip burgers in college or high school or whatever, why they looked at it as a stepping stone. And there's a large part of this industry that deservedly and is good for that. But that's not why I chose it as a lifelong career. And at least I'm not expecting everybody who works for me to want to make this a lifelong career, but I'd like them to have the moment of like, oh yeah, this could be, right? And they could, if you want to go on and be an architect, that's fine. I hope you've enjoyed your time here. But I want, that's what I mean by selfishly. Right. So selfishly, like, we're serving the stuff that we're proud of, and that's for us. But it's also a form of hospitality. Like, when you come in there, I hate being sold shit, like at a restaurant. You know what I mean? Like, I hate it. Like, I can find the bottom of the menu by myself. Like, if I ask you for a wine recommendation, you just point to the most expensive bottle. Like, this is just like a sleazy used card salesman. Like, I don't want that. I'm proud of all of the stuff. Like, what's good? But it's all good, or we wouldn't sell it. So don't worry about that. Tell me what you like. What are you in the mood for? Like, so, and we have a whole series of questions we walk people through so we can narrow them in on the stuff that's already on the menu that they might like. And if it's like, this is problematic, I'm just going to take that menu from you and ask you enough questions and just bring you something you like. And then after you like something I've brought you, maybe you want to take another look at that menu. Maybe we form some trust. But what I don't want ever is that, like, feeling of hard sell, that like, I'm selling you this thing. It's like, I want enough people to want to come to Alley 26 for what we do, for our core area of competence, that they're there for what we do. I'm not selling them on anything. I'm like providing the service of walking through the menu with them to like guide them toward the thing that they're probably going to geek out on the most, or they're probably going to get the most enjoyment from. I'm not here to sell you anything. You walk through the door hoping to buy something. Like, this is not a sales pitch. So when I say selfishly, it's like I want to set the situation so that I as a professional and my staff has the best interaction with guests. We have people there that are interested in what we do, so I'm not trying to convince you why you should order what we are, because hopefully the brand is good enough that you know it's a cocktail bar and I'm there for a cocktail. So that helps, right? I'm proud of the stuff, so even if you don't like it, I'm not ashamed of it. It's not like I sold you an inferior product. You just didn't believe me that vinegar tastes like vinegar. You just didn't believe me when I said that ribeye was a fatty cut of meat, that it was fatty. Like, it's a ribeye. I can't help you with that. But I can hopefully guide you when you say, how's the ribeye? And I say, it's a delicious fatty cut of meat. And you're like, oh, it's fatty. I'm like, yes. Oh, does you have a leaner one? No, let's try something else. Like, hopefully, but that's service too, like talking them away from making things. I don't want to put something in front of you you're not going to like. But if I happen to, I as a professional can feel good that I served you something quality. It's just not what it's the K-pop, It's like, it could be great. It's just not my thing. It's not your thing? Great. Let's get you your thing. Like that's hospitality. So that's what I mean by selfish. I want to put them in the position, I want to write the menu in a certain way so it elicits questions. And if you have questions and my staff has answers, all of a sudden they're answering questions. They're not just taking orders. Like, so that is selfish. Like, I'm making you ask just another question. Just one more, just a little bit of confusion puts my staff in the position of like demonstrating that they can be professional. They're not just here to take your order. They're here to actually help you have an experience. And as far as like whether it's for the LGBTQ Center or whatever it is, like, we are a part of Durham. Like, being here in Durham, Alley 26 is my goal, and this is like line one of orientation, is Alley 26 is named after the alley which we abut. Like, and I did that purposely because it's like, we're not a great New York bar. We're hopefully a great Durham bar. Like, our idea is to be about who we are and show, like, maybe early on people thought this isn't a Durham thing. I'm like, no, it's not what you think a Durham thing is. It's what I think a downtown Durham can be, and I wanted to get here early enough to help shape what that is. And I think in many cases, for the most part, we've got a few exceptions. For the most part, it is people doing their thing well, and offering something quality. Maybe it's a little higher price point than other areas of the city. Let me think. A city with a more expensive neighborhood. I don't think Durham invented that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so it's okay. Like, you go downtown and maybe things are a little more expensive downtown, but that didn't stop other people from having other things all over the city. Like, there's no reason that Durham can't have nicer things and more affordable options. I mean, we can't price everybody out. That'd be crazy. But the idea that downtown Durham, which, as I said earlier, was a bunch of like offices and bail bondsmen, and even when I opened, it was a lot of bail bondsmen. I wasn't the first down here by any stretch, but it was still kind of half empty. So, like, the fact that all these people are willing to take a chance on Durham, these other entrepreneurs are willing to take a chance on Durham in the small scale and start something in a neighborhood where the first question out of most of your guests, at least when I opened, was, is it safe here? It's not a no-brainer. That's a conscious decision to do something that's not going to be easy. Like, I don't think that's a problem that we're filling up spaces that were basically underused or not used at all.
Yeah. You've mentioned your staff quite a few times, and you even made a really great claim that your claim to fame is that you spend so much time training your staff, yes. Right? Talk to me a little bit about, your onboarding process that you've created for your staff and how that differs from previous hospitality or bartending jobs that you've had where you've had an onboarding from someone else.
Okay, so I didn't say it was a claim to fame. I just said we do it. In fact, I hope nobody realizes we're doing it, because they might figure it out, that you actually need to continually train them. And if you want the best staff, you have to keep training them and keep proving to them why this is interesting. Like, you got to do distillery tours, you got to bring people in, you got to, if they're not engaged, what I want from, if you sit down at Alley 26 and you're having a conversation with your waiter, I want you to see that genuine glint in the eye when they're telling you about something they think is delicious. They're like, oh yeah, that's great. And they're not selling you on something, they're just sharing the truth about this cocktail. This is my favorite. Mm-hmm. This is my favorite because of these things. And usually but often they don't know why it's so cool unless you train them. Mm. If you don't know why we use 100% blue agave tequila, if you don't know why this stuff when I tell them, if we're learning about mezcal or whatever, I don't require you to drink it at home. But I require you to understand why other people like it, A, and B, what differentiates from good and not so good qualitatively. Mm-hmm. That's being a professional, knowing, back to our Maserati dealer. Mm-hmm. Most of those sales guys can't afford to drive one, but they can tell you all of the bits about the car that make it special, right? So when it comes to training staff, it's really an extension, it's more of like a concentration of the same idea for customers. If I can show you why this stuff is actually as cool as Shannon thinks it is, then my first sale is always to the staff. If you can't sell it to your staff, it's not gonna sell. And since I don't like the hard sell, I like this is cool. I want them to go yeah, this is cool. And then when somebody asks them about it, you're like, oh, it's so cool. You should like it because of X, Y, and Z. So we lean into training because that's what I want. I want to selfishly have a good staff. I also want them to understand in their own heart of hearts why we're doing the things and why they're cool. So when people are like, and they're like, okay, you don't have to like it. That doesn't mean I'm giving you something you don't like, right? A. But how is it different? We're a craft cocktail bar, and the only way to know about craft cocktails is to learn about a lot of spirits, to learn a lot more than I was ever taught on any level. And I learned my own stuff outside, I did levels of sommelier training and stuff, but I did that for myself. I decided I like this. I was working at Crook's Corner, which is the restaurant in Chapel Hill that we're trying to reopen. I was working there back in the day, and I was redoing their bar program, and I realized that restaurant's bar program was very wine-centric. So I've always liked wine, I needed to learn more. So I went down the rabbit hole of the first few levels of sommelier training and did that, and then was able to like move that list around in a certain way. But most of what I knew, I didn't learn there. Yeah. I learned it because I wanted to learn it. But then I started doing what we called at the time at Crooks back in the day, we formed what we called the Booze Hound Book Club. So I basically gave them Kevin Zarelli's Windows in the World wine book. And every chapter in the book is like, there's American whites and American reds, and they just go through origins and wines. And I would teach the book, and that's the book's whole purpose, is to be a wine course, right? And it's been around for like 30 years now. Literally, it comes from Windows in the World, which is the restaurant at the top of the World Trade Center. So it started in the 80s, and it's still called that, even though clearly that restaurant does not exist. We did that, and we did it once a month. I did not make it, it was not mandatory. It was so if people were interested, and I learned that people actually were interested, they did want to know more, right? So the staff did want to know more, and they'd come in and we'd taste some of the wine, and it would be me, and then I'd bring in somebody different every month. Like, so if it was Spanish wine, I'd bring in Andre Tamers, who is an importer of Spanish wine. If it was Italian wine, we brought in James Stock, who was the Haw River wine man. He got to start doing mostly Italian wines. It was, French wine. I brought in, I think Thomas came in, I forget at this point. But we did different people for different, so it wasn't just, you didn't have to just listen to me talk, right? And so I like that idea. And at Alley 26, we do a lot of training just to make sure that if our conceit is that we have the best bartenders, and part of our service is the knowledge that comes with people that might be interested. Because if I can sell you on being interested in cocktails, I'm probably gonna get more of your business than I would otherwise. So what I want is an interested clientele. I'm not gonna get an interested clientele if when they talk to my bartender, he or she doesn't know anything, right? So I really need my bartenders to provide that. They are the service. They are what we're providing, and not just by making the drinks consistently, which we definitely need, but also by being able to answer questions off book. Like, oh yeah, and then blah, 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 and that genuine enthusiasm, if they can learn that. And the only way to do that is to give them a lot of training, to give them the why it's interesting, and then keep it up. So once a month we have a mandatory meeting, which is a little bit of come to Jesus, like this is what we could do better, and this is how we run food or whatever, that the kind of the less fun part of service is like little elements. And then they give us a lot of feedback. This would be a lot easier for us to do if you fix the computer in this way. And we're like, okay, we'll do that. Heard, sorry. You know what I mean? Like, it's a given, you have to be open to like telling them like, hey, I need you to do this more. And they're like, hey, I need you to do this more. And you're like, you're right, we're gonna do that. But then also, usually we have somebody come and talk. Like whether it's an oyster farmer, it's a cheese maker, it's somebody who does charcuterie for a living, it's a winemaker, usually as often it's either distillery rep, or we'll go visit a distillery, or we'll go visit a brewery. Yeah. But it's almost always products we carry, because otherwise why are we visiting you if we don't like you enough to carry you? But it also helps. It's like, no, when somebody asks them a question about something, like, yes, oh, when we were there, and they're like, what? So that's what it is. And for me, it's about like, I like the stuff we're doing, and it's very interesting. Like there's 10,000 years of history wrapped up into what we're doing. On the one hand, and I think history is interesting, but also there's an amazing amount of bullshit. Like there's an amazing amount of marketing, right? And everything in alcohol is sold with such a story, right? And pulling apart the complete and utter nonsense, it's toasted from the rest of it. Was it Mad Men? That was the original one with for Durham. They were talking, the original episode of Mad Men, they were selling Lucky Strike cigarettes. And in the episode, I don't know what the reality of it, because this is the show, but they leaned on the fact that it said, it's toasted. Lucky Strikes, because we toast all our tobacco. Funny story, all tobacco is toasted. Every single cigarette tobacco was toasted. But Lucky Strike's like, no, theirs is cancerous, ours is toasted. Because that was the storyline in the show was that they were like, look over here.
Yeah.
Like what are we saying? And once we say it's toasted, nobody else can say it's toasted, even though they're all toasted. Right? It's like gluten-free vodka.
It's all gluten-free.
It's all gluten-free, but one of them's got it printed on the label.
Yeah.
Handmade, 8 million cases at a time. Okay. Okay. So knowing certain people, there's like, and so a lot of like the knowledge is fun to learn. It's like, you've heard this thing your whole life. Let's unpack that. What part of that is like actual, real? What part of that, and a lot of it's just basic. And so much so, like, I want everybody to know more. Like, so if you go onto our YouTube channel, there's like 140 videos on there. There's at least 8 of them that are 101s that my staff has to watch, but you could go on there right now and watch Rum 101 if you're interested in rum. And it's just Shannon talking about rum for 20 minutes about this is what rum is. Like, it's a primer. It's not like, you're not get any certification after 20 minutes of Shannon talking about rum or 45 minutes of me talking about whiskey. But it's there. Like, if you're actually interested, you watch that, and all of a sudden, it'll probably, for most people, it dispels, 4 or 5 myths immediately, just inadvertently, because the truth is just not what it's toasted is, so education is kind of the cornerstone of the brand. Like, I really want both outward facing, I want folks who are interested. We have a virtual cocktail class to this day. We started it in the pandemic, and I was going to stop it, but most of the people that do it are bar regulars. Like, they do a virtual cocktail class from me when they come, like they're regulars at the bar in person. And I was like, I just assumed it was going to go away, but we had enough people. And it's fun to do because I always make up original cocktails for them. So it's like at least 3 more, and then usually we give them a few extra things to do with all the ingredients. Like, so I didn't make you buy a bottle of vermouth and now you have no idea what to do with it, right? But you can make these 2 cocktails and you can make these other ones. Like, that's fine. So it's outward facing, meaning like client facing. Like, if you come to the bar, hopefully you can ask questions, you'll get answers. You can go onto our YouTube channel. You can do virtual stuff. We did a whole interview series during the pandemic. I'd like to get back to it, but it'll probably be a year before I can, called Industry Insider Series. And it's still up on the YouTube. We interviewed master distiller from Heaven Hill. We interviewed the master distiller from Belmead, who makes a bourbon in Tennessee. We interviewed the global brand ambassador for Hennessy. We interviewed people from all over, the East Coast brand ambassador for Hendrick's Gin. We interviewed like different people, and sometimes it was just we were just interviewing. When we're doing, Connor O'Driscoll, who's the master distiller at Heaven Hill, they've got like 4 million barrels of bourbon at this moment. He's like, I'm not making drinks. I'm like, yes, sir, whatever you say. But like others were like down, 100% game. We interviewed Lynn House, who is the cocktail person for Heaven Hill. She did, she helped them, she was on the team that redid Dubonnet, because Heaven Hill is a product that, I don't know if you know anything about this. No. You don't have to, but you could watch Lynn House have a great time making drinks with us during the middle of the pandemic from her apartment in Chicago, and you could learn all about Dubonnet and why we think she's so cool. Okay. So like, it's all about like finding ways to do that. We also do a lot of events that are just industry only. Like you said, having good competition is important. So when we do things, when we have brand guys come, we often will reach out to all of the other bars in downtown and be like, hey, Joanne Street from Wild Turkey's coming on this day. You are welcome to come. Dan from Glenmorangie is coming. It's just for bar folks. Yeah. So just that we did one with him. We did one that was open to the public in the evening, but we did one that was just industry folks during the daytime on a Monday. It's like the day you're least likely to work as a hospitality person is Monday, and you could come and it's free. But we're hosting our competition. It's like it's just not the competition. is a very, very limited window to gain to like an understanding of who your folks are in the same space, right? They are the folks in town that we share the most in common with. Yeah. We share the same clientele because there's very few people that go to just my bar and not Sean and Michelle's, right. You know, or, you know, like we're across the street from each other. I watch people walk back and forth all night. Like, I'm well aware of how this works, and I'm thankful it does. Because hopefully they're bringing people down here that wouldn't come to Alley 26, but they want to go to more than one place. And then I'm bringing folks that want to go to more than one place. And then now we both have cross-pollination. So, like, anyway, that's cool.
Yeah, that is cool. Michelle and Sean are awesome. Before I let you get out of here, I got a couple rapid-fire questions. Okay. A man said okay.
I haven't been good about rabbits so far, so.
It's okay.
You're going to edit the crap out of this thing.
Okay. What's the costliest decision you would make again?
Oh, Jesus. At Alley 26?
Yes.
Okay. Because the costliest decision I would make again is Crook's Corner. Just the whole idea. The costliest decision I would make again. There's so many ways to think about cost. Like, is it time? Because people say, oh, you were really smart opening this bar when you did. I'm like, was I? Because it was for 2 years of people asking you, is it safe here? I worked like 70 hours a week for 2 years. Like, I don't know that that's a smart decision. That was really costly. I don't know that I'd do it again. I think if I mean, I'm glad I did it, and I'm glad that it's working. But that's really hard when your wife's like, hey, can we go to this show in 3 months? I'm like, I don't know. Like, that's a hard conversation to have, and she's not going to let me she's not going to put up with that shit again. So costliest decision I would make again. I think the costliest decision I would make again is how we handled the pandemic. We spent all of our money keeping our core management staff, like inventing jobs and revenue streams, which weren't very revenue. They came back, but I let them know early on. I'm like, the smart thing for Shannon to do is to shut this thing down for like 6 months. Like, I've got enough money, the government's willing to pay me enough money to come back in 6 months. Like, so that was incredibly expensive in ways. But, you know, nothing worth doing nothing you've ever been proud of was easy. And nothing was cheap either, if you consider like time and money and just how difficult some shit is, that like it's incredibly hard to do certain things. So the most expensive decision we ever made was actually a series of decisions. Sorry, I'm not really good at rapid fire. To keep the bar going when it didn't make, like, we turned our dining room into a store. We, went from having tonic syrup to having 30 varieties of syrups and shrubs. We started selling lunches to go. We are not a to-go place. We did all kinds of nonsense, so much so, and I'll culminate when I say a series of stuff. When we opened, remember that brief window before Delta hit and everybody thought COVID was over and it was just like, oh, this is great. And in Florida, I guess it was over because they stopped believing it. They were like, this woman comes in and she sits at the bar. She's like, oh man, y'all didn't pivot. You twirled. I was like, yes, ma'am, we tried everything. I like to say every 10 days, new business model. So that was incredibly hard and incredibly expensive. And I would like to think that we could do, if you believe that your staff is your biggest asset, and I do, I'd do it again.
Okay, that's a bold claim. If in regards to Alley 26, how would you describe that brand in 3 words?
How would I explain? We have inside stuff I'm not going to say. Delicious,
okay.
Hospitable.
Okay. Delicious.
And I'll save you a word.
Okay. Oh, he's saving me words, saving me time. All righty. If you didn't have to make money, how would you spend your day?
If I didn't have to make money, how would I spend my day? I think everybody's lying to themselves when they answer this question because we have to make money, right? So if I didn't have to make money, I'm like, oh, I'd lie on a beach someplace, right? This would be great. But I think after about a year of that, I'd be like, okay, now what the hell am I gonna do? Like, I gotta do something, right? And maybe it doesn't have to make money. So maybe something in education that I would do something to teach people cool stuff. And maybe it would do something that I'd have to learn about, I don't know about yet. If I didn't have to make money, I'd probably I'd do a lot more traveling, I'd learn a lot more stuff, and then eventually I'd find the stuff that I just wanted to think about this for a few years and teach that to other people because it's so cool.
You are obsessed with cool things. I'm surprised that's not a word that you gave me. So, last but not least, what habits have you had to remove from your life since starting Alley 26?
Oh, from my life?
From your life.
Habits have I had to remove from my life? Well, every place you work is its own thing. So honestly, I bartended for, as I said, my first job was in '91. I opened Alley 26 in September of 2012. So the hardest thing for me opening, that's not true, there's too many harder things. But one of the hardest things to do was eliminating my own bad habits behind the bar. Like my own ways to do things that didn't deliver the best product. Because people, when I first opened, would always ask, like, oh, you wouldn't give me the recipe for this. I'm like, I'm happy to give you the recipe. There's no recipes. You come in, usually I'll print it out for you. Here, you can take it home. I don't care. Because you're going to screw it up a number of ways. Either A, you're not going to have understood how much work went into before you ordered it. You're like, I'm not going to do all that. I'm like, no, I didn't think you would. Or you don't believe me when I say technique is important. So like, I'm going to make a better Manhattan than you are. Unless you have like, well, I like my Manhattans with 5 ounces of rye whiskey and 1 ounce of cherry. Like if you have your like, this is how I make them at home, then I don't care. But like, chances are, if you just want a classic Manhattan or a classic dry martini, hopefully I would be able to do it better than you do because I've done it a few thousand more times. But the thing I'm going to do better is paying attention to the technique of doing it. Because certain things just produce a better product. And those techniques are different depending on what you want, right? And I've had the time, or the luxury of time, to try a few different ways, right? And before I did a craft cocktail bar, I might not have always done the right technique. But then when you start hanging your hat on, no, we're doing it the right way, then you actually have to do it. So beating my own bad habits out of myself was one of the hardest things to do. Now, I don't know if that's what you were looking for, is like a life change.
No, that's fine. That's totally fine. That's totally fine. I think that's totally valid. And I appreciate you coming in to share so much today. I feel like I learned a whole lot about, really hanging your hat on training your people right, and understanding what it means to have good neighbors. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.